The call came late. Not late in the sense of a clock, though the hour was already slipping toward dawn, but late in the way tragedies always are. Late enough that if it had come a little earlier, things might have been different. Late enough that by the time it was fully understood, it could no longer change anything. Yu Menglong's phone lit up once that night. Just once. And what it carried was not a conversation, but a message, brief, fragmented, unfinished. A voice message that would later become the center of grief, questions, and a silence too heavy to ignore. According to people close to the family, his mother did not listen to it immediately. At first, she thought it was another missed call, another short message from a son who was often busy, often traveling, often exhausted. She had grown used to brief check-ins, hurried reassurances. "I'm fine, Mum. I'll call you later. Don't worry." This one sounded different. Those who have heard the message describe it as unusually quiet. No background noise. No music. Just his voice, lower than usual, slower, as if he was choosing his words carefully. As if he knew he did not have many of them left. There is a pause at the beginning of the recording. A breath. Then his voice. "Mum." That single word is what his mother says she cannot forget. Not what followed. Not the silence at the end. Just the way he said her name. Soft, restrained, as though he was trying not to alarm her while already carrying something heavy. In the message, he does not explain everything. He does not name names. He does not say he is in danger. But there is an unmistakable tension beneath the calm. He apologizes for worrying her, for not being able to talk long, for things left unsaid. He says he will explain later. He says he just wanted her to hear his voice. Later never came. By the time the message was replayed again, by the time its weight was fully understood, Yu Menglong was already gone. What followed his death was a blur of official statements, fragmented timelines, and a growing distance between what was said publicly and what the family says they experienced privately. For his mother, grief was not a single moment, but a slow unraveling, marked by questions no one seemed eager to answer. Why was the message sent when it was? Why did it sound like a farewell without explicitly saying goodbye? And why, she asks quietly, did everything after move so fast? Sources close to the family say that within hours, details began to shift. Accounts of his final movements did not always align. Times were rounded. Explanations were simplified. And when his mother asked about the call, about whether it had been logged, examined, preserved, she was told it was not significant. To her, it was everything. She replayed it repeatedly in the days that followed, searching for meaning in the pauses, the tone, the words he chose not to say. She noticed things she had missed the first time. The faint strain in his breathing, the way his voice dipped at the end of sentences, the hesitation before he spoke her name. A mother knows her child's voice. She knows when it is relaxed. She knows when it is forced. And this one, she insists, was forced. In private, she began asking questions. Not accusations, questions. Was he alone when he recorded it? Was anyone with him? Why was there no follow-up call? Why was this message treated as irrelevant when it was clearly intentional? The answers, when they came at all, were vague. As days turned into weeks, something else began to trouble her. People who had once spoken freely became cautious. Conversations ended abruptly. She says she was advised, gently at first, then more firmly, to focus on mourning, not details. To let professionals handle the rest. But for her, mourning and truth could not be separated. The voice message became a line she could not cross back over. It marked a before and an after. Before, when her son was alive somewhere in the world. After, when his last words existed only in a digital file that no one seemed interested in examining closely. She keeps replaying the final seconds of the recording. Not the words, but the silence. There is a moment after he finishes speaking where the recording continues for a few seconds longer than expected. No voice. Just quiet. As if he had more to say and decided against it. As if someone was nearby. Or as if he simply did not know how to end it. That silence, she says, is louder than anything he said. Publicly, Yu Menglong's death has been framed as tragic, but uncomplicated. A loss. An ending. Something to be mourned, and then slowly put away. Privately, for his mother, it feels unresolved, like a sentence cut short. She does not claim to know exactly what happened. She does not say the message contains proof. What she says is simpler, and perhaps more unsettling, that her son was trying to reach her for a reason, and that reason has never been properly addressed. Every time she listens to the recording, she hears the same thing. Not fear, not panic, but restraint. A carefulness that suggests awareness. Awareness that time was limited. Awareness that words matter. The voice message remains stored on her phone, unchanged, untouched by official reports or public summaries. It exists in its original form, a fragment of a moment no one can revisit. And for her, it is not evidence in the legal sense. It is memory. It is instinct. It is a mother's refusal to believe that her child's final attempt to speak meant nothing. Some endings announce themselves loudly. Others arrive quietly, disguised as ordinary moments. A short message, a familiar voice, a promise to explain later. Yu Menglong never got that chance. And the question that continues to haunt his mother is not just what happened to him, but why his final call feels less like closure and more like the beginning of a story that was never allowed to be told. Yu Menglong's mother says the days that followed moved in two different directions at once. Publicly, everything accelerated. Statements were released. Explanations were condensed. Timelines were summarized into neat, digestible fragments. Privately, however, time slowed to a painful crawl, measured not in hours, but in unanswered questions. She began by doing what any parent would do, listening again. And again. She memorized every second of the voice message, every pause, every breath. She tried to hear it not as a grieving mother, but as someone searching for context. Was there fear hidden beneath his calm? Was he being careful because someone might hear him? Was he trying to protect her from panic? What unsettled her most was not what he said, but what he avoided. There were no names, no locations, no clear explanation. It was as though he had decided, consciously, that some things were too dangerous to speak aloud. That choice alone raised a question no one around her could answer. Why would a son who trusted his mother with everything suddenly speak in fragments? When she asked whether investigators had analyzed the message in full, its metadata, its timing, its location, she was told that it had already been reviewed and deemed irrelevant. No one explained what that review involved. No one asked her what she heard in his voice. No one asked her why she believed the message mattered. She remembers one moment vividly, sitting in a quiet room, holding her phone, while someone across from her said, "It won't change anything." To her, it already had. As days passed, she noticed something else, an absence. Friends who once called freely became cautious. Conversations grew shorter. When she asked about specific details, who saw him last, who spoke to him before the message, answers became less precise. Words like probably, approximately, and as far as we know, replaced clarity. It felt less like grief management and more like containment. In private, she began writing things down. Times, names, contradictions. She compared what she was told on one day with what she heard the next. Small differences emerged, nothing dramatic, nothing that could be pointed to as proof, but enough to create unease. A timeline that shifted by minutes here, an explanation that changed tone there. And always in the background, that voice message. She says there was pressure. Not loud, not aggressive, but persistent. Suggestions that she rest. That she avoid social media. That she not misinterpret things while emotional. Well-meaning advice, perhaps. But it carried an implication that continuing to ask questions was unnecessary. What troubled her most was how quickly the world seemed ready to move on. Yu Menglong's name became a headline, then a memory, then a topic discussed in hushed tones. For fans, there was shock, sadness, disbelief. For the industry, there was silence. For her, there was no closure, only the sense that something unfinished had been carefully wrapped and set aside. Late at night, she would replay the message once more, focusing on the final seconds. That unexplained silence at the end. No accidental cutoff. No sudden interruption. Just quiet. She began to wonder whether that silence was intentional too. In many cultures, especially across Asia, a final call is not made lightly. It is often symbolic. A check-in, a reassurance, or a goodbye disguised as something ordinary. The restraint in his voice suggested awareness of consequences, of timing, of risk. To global audiences watching from afar, from the United States, the United Kingdom, Spain, Brazil, the story might appear distant. Another tragic loss in an industry already familiar with pressure and scrutiny. But for those who understand the emotional language beneath the surface, the story feels painfully familiar. A young man burdened by expectations. A system that values quiet resolutions. A mother left to interpret what could not be said out loud. What makes this case linger is not the absence of answers, but the refusal to explore the questions fully. Why was the voice message dismissed so quickly? Why was there no public acknowledgement of its emotional weight? And why does the story feel incomplete, as though a chapter was deliberately removed? Yu Menglong's mother does not claim certainty. She does not claim conspiracy. What she claims is something far more human, that her son reached out in his final hours, and that reaching out meant something. She believes that message was not a coincidence. It was a choice. And choices, she says, deserve to be examined, not erased. The world may remember Yu Menglong through performances, photographs, and carefully curated memories. She remembers him through a single recording that refuses to fade. A quiet voice calling for his mother, wrapped in pauses and restraint, carrying the weight of something unfinished. Until the questions surrounding that call are addressed honestly, she believes his story remains open. Not concluded, not resolved, only paused. If you followed this story this far, ask yourself one thing. If your loved one left a final message like this, would you accept silence as an answer? In the next part, we'll examine what happened after this message was discovered, the inconsistencies, the pressure, and the moments that raised even deeper questions. Stay with this story, because some voices fade, but others refuse to be silenced.